Hello.
Morning.
Hello, everybody. Happy post-long weekend for those of us here in the States. And for everyone in Europe, I hope you enjoyed your very quiet day without all of us noisy Americans.
Some of us were on a holiday too.
We will be started in just one moment. Please mark your attendance. And I see Jacques and John, are you prepared with your amazing presentation?
Absolutely.
Groovy. Today we have two amazing readouts, and then we'll have some other outstanding things to talk about. Oh man, do we have everybody from the TAC here? Nice. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the May 30th edition of the OpenSSF TAC call. It looks as if we absolutely have quorum. Yay, us. Do we have anyone that is interested in helping us take notes and scribe today? Oh,
I'll help.
awesome. Tim, are you also volunteering?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, sir. One of the most important things, people that don't make the calls absolutely look at the videos and read the notes. So it's a critical service, and we appreciate your help with that. Let us quickly, we're going to spend 2 minutes. If there are any updates for any of the issues listed in the agenda. Let's talk about TAC issue 163, which was comments about the CRA and PLD. There was a bunch of activity on this. How do we feel about this? Are we ready to turn this over to the Public Policy Committee?
Have they seen the draft yet? Do we know if this answers the kind of questions and is the right shape for what they were looking for?
I have not shared it with them. I know that there are a couple folks that are on that committee that have participated, but we have not formally said, what do you think?
Cool.
I am glad to do that after this call. Well, after the next call. After I have lunch and then after the next call.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly clear to me when we felt we were done. So I don't know how you determine this, but I'm happy with what's there.
Yeah, a lot of good collaboration. Any additional thoughts or comments on it?
Yeah, I like it. I like what's there. definitely feels ready to send to them. It's just like a peek and see if they like it. If they have other concerns or want more, we could keep going. But
All right. Thank you. I appreciate everyone that helped collaborate on that. I will give them a pre-read in about 2 hours officially. And feel free to make additional comments either in the issue or on that document. Let's move on to issue 151, the project formerly known as the Sterling Toolchain. The doodle poll closed, and we determined that in 54 minutes, we will be meeting weekly, Tuesdays at noon Eastern time. So there will be a group of folks that will continue to work on and refine the Sterling Toolchain idea. Do we have any additional thoughts or comments about that? Ava.
I would just like to point out that time conflicts with one of these CISA SBOM public calls. And one of the ones that I am somewhat obligated to regularly attend, so I will not be able to join in 54 minutes.
And it also conflicts, I think, with a salsa call and another internal working group call. That's what you get with a group vote. I'm sorry. We will do our best to take excellent notes, and it will be recorded, and we are always open for additional conversations, and we'll try to keep everybody up to date. Any additional thoughts about the security tube, security tool chain, tool belt thing? Well, bring your ideas in 53 minutes, except Ava, who is busy. But you always are welcome to share your ideas. Issue 164, we had a lot of conversation around the access management policy. So any update folks want to share about that with the group?
Amanda, did you want to talk about the work that you did on this over the past week?
Sure. So Jordan ran a scraper to see anyone that was an individual contributor to any of our repos. And he gave me an audit of that list. I went through and moved people that were individual contributors to a team and invited them to the team and removed their individual access. And so there might be some breakage with their collaboration if they don't accept the team invite, but I wanted to make the switch sooner rather than having it over our heads for months to come. So there are now no individual contributors on any of our repos, and Jordan ran the scraper to verify.
Huzzah.
Awesome.
So does this mean this is completed? We can close this?
I would say that aspect of it is complete. I think there was another issue that was tagged onto that as well. That was over my head.
Okay. Jacques.
Oh, this is apparently a really popular discussion topic. Mine is very parochial and selfish, which is that anywhere you see J Chester Shopify, you should just use J Chester. I create accounts tied to my job so that I separate what is personal and what is public. That's great until they sack you and you can't log in. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Lay off. I wasn't sacked. I was laid off. And that's all I have to say. Eva, I think Eva next.
May I suggest sending out 1 or 2 blast notifications on mailing lists, Slack, in the general channels, things like that, just to let folks know that, hey, the TAC did this update. If you have any trouble, here's what you should do.
Excellent idea. Can you assist with that, Amanda?
Yeah, I already posted it in the general Slack. I didn't do a mailing list, but I could do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Zach.
Linked off that issue is pull request 155, which is sort of the codification of the work we just did. I think 3 of the 7 TAC members had a chance to review it. So if we get a 4th approval, I think it's ready to land. Jordan was kind enough to take the item around should anyone be able to have membership in the OpenSSF organization, which I believe at the last TAC meeting we thought was an interesting idea, but had a few questions about the invitation around, and that will be landing as a separate pull request. So the content that's there should align with what we discussed and agreed to at the last TAC meeting.
Excellent. Fellow TAC members, please review that issue. We'll see if we can get that wrapped up today. Jonathan.
I added this as a bullet point on the end of the list of items, but I figure I should introduce this now because it's relevant to the permissions model thing. A few months ago, I don't remember exactly, I was rooting around through this plugin, GitHub app settings, that was applied to the OpenSSF organization. So you'll notice that a lot of our TAC, a lot of our working groups have the settings.yaml file. The downside is that collaborators can set their own permissions. And so if you look down here, security implications, this app makes it so that anybody who is push permission to the repository can give themselves admin permissions on the repository. So as a result of this, all of the OpenSSF org repositories that have actually any repository across the OpenSSF, because you could add this file and then give yourself permissions even if the file didn't exist previously. So as an implication, several months ago, Brian yanked this app off of the org. And it's still not there, but those files are still present. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Saw this, said, security implications, and then said we should get rid of that. So questions?
No, just additional information. I mean, I remember there was also some meta information that was meant to be extracted from those files for the website. And I don't know if that, what happened to it, but Jory would know. I guess we don't use it anyway if it's been pulled.
Yeah, I actually meant to talk to Jory about it because she was one of the people that helped set it up. It's no longer part of the OpenSSF actively. This is part of, Jordan's doing some work in this area around reorging, stuff. And Amanda's kind of a part of this too. I think that we did this and it was part of the operations conversation, but the TAC never got notified of this decision and that this happened. So this is me saying, oh, hey, we should probably have done this like a couple weeks ago. And so this is me actually doing it now. So yeah, you're welcome. Sorry, it's late.
I support the idea of cleaning it up, but don't get me wrong.
Yeah. I think that giving people an ability to manage their own permissions over their working groups is a good idea, but I don't know if this is the right one. But something like this should, I see the value in what we were trying to do with this at the time. Ava?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I think that's good. The one question I have, just as I'm reading issue 155, as I'm skimming quickly, maybe it's called out somewhere and I'm just overlooking it, but the discussion point about the org itself having open membership was raised in 2 weeks ago's meeting on the GitHub issue. Is it, how did that decision land and where is that decision captured?
Yeah, I think I can answer that. We decided that that was an interesting idea. We decided to remove it from pull request 155 so that we could land it and move forward with the more urgent work around organizing folks around teams. And then when that lands, Jordan has said that he will open up a new pull request, reintroducing it for us to discuss.
Okay, so there is not a separate pull request for it open currently.
That's correct.
That's why I couldn't find it. Thank you.
If we could get him to get that crafted in the next couple days, that'd be dandy. Thank you. Anything else, Jonathan?
Yeah, Amanda, I'm seeing that as OpenSSF staff, I'm unable to create repositories under the OpenSSF org. Is that something that, what is the current creating a repository process? Should staff be able to create repositories? Should TAC members be able to create repositories? Who should be able to create repositories and who shouldn't?
Right now I have it just for owners because that's the setting that was easiest, but I'm open for anyone that the TAC wants to create repositories to give that permission.
I believe the status of this PR says staff and TAC should have it, which is, I believe, also what the TAC would like. So let's make sure that the actual settings reflect what's in the PR.
Yeah. I just because Alpha Omega, I end up creating repositories for projects as I'm working, so would be helpful to keep that and not have to ask someone for permissions to do so.
Excellent. So let's deal with that offline, please. Moving along, TAC issue 162. Any updates around our Foundation Group's documentation audit? Jacques?
I can't speak for anyone else. I have done literally zero, zilch, zip, nil, nada. That's partly because I've been flat out with other considerations. But it is something I would like to get some time to do maybe this week.
All right. Anyone else have any updates, or are you interested in collaborating with Jacques this week? All right. And then TAC issue 149, the vulnerability disclosure policy. Any updates that anyone wanted to share about that?
Yeah, so the question that I have here is this just it's a standing question of where should this document live? There was there's a couple of opinions. One is that the policy should live with the vulnerability disclosure working group open repository because it's something it's an item delivered by them. There's some feedback that maybe it should go with the OpenSSF Foundation because it's an organization level policy. And then there's another conversation about maybe it being .github because .github is like not the foundation repository, but it is GitHub's way of having like a top level repository for your entire org. There's a couple of different opinions here. One of them, one of the things that I posed is maybe foundation is mirrored to .github because then foundation is the top level one, but then all of the stuff there gets reflected into the .github, even though we don't have it just so that the name can be foundation, which may be symbolic in some way to some people. I don't know. It's a rather long thread. So the thing has been voted upon. It's been ratified by the TAC. Where does it live? That's the question.
So I'd like to assign homework to the TAC this week. Please review that issue and provide your opinion on where we think that needs to live. And we will come back with a decision on our next call and get that moving forward, please.
Yes, please and thank you. Yeah, if we can, I don't know who does it get voted upon at the end of that? Like, where does it live, or do we just hopefully come to a consensus about where it goes?
Let's see how the conversation goes, and we can hold a formal vote if we need to. But hopefully, conversation naturally lends itself to a positive conclusion.
Okay. I just don't, I think the problem that for me is I don't know who to listen to. Like, who's the person that's like, this opinion, if we all agree, like, okay, we've all agreed, or like, yeah. So I guess, okay, I'll wait till next TAC meeting to get consensus on that one.
There are pros and cons to all the choices. So let's have that conversation this week, please. All right, moving along, I would love to share with you an update on the BEST working group. Can everybody see my screen? Great. I will not take my allotted time. I only have a few short things to discuss. Just to give everyone an update, we have two current best practices guides that the group is working on, a source code management best practices guide and a C and C++ compiler option hardening best practices guide. Both of those are progressing very well. Lots of multi-organization, multi-contributor feedback. I feel we are close to having the beta for the source code management guide ready probably within the next month. That's pretty well baked. We have a great review of good settings that should be in place for both GitHub and GitLab. And then there's been some conversation about could people put in suggestions for alternate repositories like a Subversion or other types of things. And yes, we absolutely will take those patches if somebody wants to put the effort in. So you should see those guides finishing up this summer, and we will definitely share with the TAC once they are ready to go, and we'll work with Jennifer and everyone for a blog and whatnot. So I would anticipate sometime later this summer, those will be ready. We have a new SIG, the memory safety SIG, which I will jump to very quickly. This is picking up mobilization plan stream 4. There's been a group of folks working on rewriting that text, and we are close to moving it into a GitHub repository. That's our PR4. I anticipate we'll probably make that decision this week, so that the plan will be available in an open source way that anyone that has additional feedback or suggestions can contribute. And then there is a note that we plan on collaborating with the C and C++ compiler hardening guide team as well. There's some overlap, but we wanted to, if there was good guidance from the compiler hardening space, we wanted to ingest that as part of the advocacy that'll be part of the memory safety rewrite. And those were the two big things that the group is working on. And the working group would ask, this presentation is available for everybody. It should be in the link. I will get it posted up to the working group's repository, but is this the type of information? Do we like this format and template? And is there any specific information someone was curious about? Like, would you like to learn more about Scorecard or OpenCRE or whatever? So any questions from the TAC or any of the observers here today? Groovy. I will yield the balance of my time to my dear friends in the end user working group, Jonathan and Jacques. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. And let me just quickly share. That should be coming through. So, okay, let's give you a quick update on the end user working group. I think it's going to be fairly quick as well. But just in general, at the moment, the main focus of the group is on threat modeling and trying to build out an enterprise architecture, a sample enterprise architecture, and then looking at how the supply chain threats would apply to that and building out a formal threat modeling architecture. We have recently spun up a dedicated series of meetings on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. EST to go through in more detail on that. And it is hosted by Henrik Plate, who is leading out that work, and that's progressing really well. Additional chunk of work we're doing is trying to recruit additional end users to actively participate in the group. Now, there's something that we have Andrew Aitken focusing on, and we are talking to a lot of different end users, a lot of different people reaching in to get additional insight, but we are not getting people directly into the meeting as yet. As we can see on here, we've got about 10 regular attendees, which is a fairly healthy number, and about 10 people that intermittently come through. In addition to that, there are tens of end users that reach out and read through the material, look at the videos, and reach out to different people. So there's quite a few people in the wings there as well. In terms of recent work, I'll get into more detail on the threat model and taxonomy piece, but just a couple of additional pieces. We have written effectively a software ingestion manifesto as a group that we're reviewing, which just highlights some of the areas we need to look at if we're consuming open source software and some of the focus areas there. Additional recruitment plan that we've been putting together to bring in additional users, and we as a group contributed to the CRA talking points in Vancouver. Anything you want to add to that, Shaq?
Nothing sort of particularly comes to mind. Definitely recruiting more folks is a big focus. Those of you who are at the OpenSSF Day may recall the incredibly awkward moment where Andrew and I said, raise your hand if you're an end user. And I think 2 people raised their hands. So we need some more representation in that department, I think.
So if I may answer the question now, it's actually regarding, I mean, who are the people who actually participate? You know, can you give me like the categories of people? Because, I mean, we have an issue later, we'll talk about this, you know, the maintainers, for instance, who feel like, okay, this is not, they are not end users. And so I'm wondering who the people are.
Well, it's fairly varied in terms of industry, but they're large industries. So large consultancy firms, large bank, large telecommunications, those sort of things. What we were trying to do as well was look at the medium and small companies, but those tend to be the people that are certainly attending. A lot of the smaller companies are talking to us, but aren't necessarily joining that main group.
Part of it to remember is that, for a large company, something like the OpenSSF, as a participant, has high leverage, and they can afford to dedicate some time to it, which a small and medium firm won't be able to. That's just in the nature of the beast. In terms of like abstractly answering your question, I would say that it's a fuzzy function as to who is an end user. It's not a crisp set, but generally speaking, the further away you get from writing open source and contributing open source back to the upstream, the more of an end user you are, the more you're taking the world as it is rather than changing the world.
I think Ava, we've got a question. You're on mute there, I think.
A couple questions.
Yep.
In the framing of the working group, no, I have a follow-up directly question about how to get more end users engaged. Take that offline. On the previous slide, you called out two things you're working on: software ingestion manifesto and the CRA talking points. I have questions on each of those. Is the software ingestion manifesto distinct from, overlapping with the S2C2F work?
It is. So that's in addition. It was raised by a couple of the group members specifically about focusing on ingestion. Yeah.
My understanding of S2C2F is it's focused on ingestion. So maybe in the future, clarifying how those are distinct or working together on it.
Yep, can do.
Yeah, Jay White participates in the end users group as well. So
awesome.
There's some mutual awareness.
Awesome.
I would position the manifesto as more motivational than sort of I don't know, structural. I'm trying to find the right word.
Yeah, S2C2F is pretty mechanical. So if this is more of a
right,
this is a manifesto of why, then that clarifies my question.
Yeah, it's more of a call to arms, Ava, than the actual details that you see in S2C2F.
Awesome. That answers my question. Thank you. And then on the CRA talking points, can the TAC, or would you like the TAC's help in any way getting that over to the policy committee?
So sorry, that was me who put that there. What I was driving at is that we had participated in that discussion with the perspective, and that the output is that document that's prepared for PLD,
not
sorry, PPC.
Perfect.
Any other questions? No, so if I can quickly dig into more of the detail on the reference architecture and threat model. So the idea behind this is really to provide that guidance or that architecture really, so an end user can take a look at it and see where the attacks occur within that sample architecture, and an understanding of the prevalence at a high level to allow them to prioritize appropriately, or at least get some ideas on where to do so, just from an end user guidance perspective. And it also helps us help people orientate where the OpenSSF offerings are. So Crobe, obviously working with Crobe in the Diagram Society to put a fantastic diagram behind that as well. It gives us a bit of insight into where to map those different OSSF programs. Current status, we do have a draft architecture, which is, I'd say, in good shape. We also have the initial threat models that are starting to come through now. Really a lot of great work getting spearheaded from Henrik, Abdullah Garcia, and ourselves. So I think really the next step is to continue that until we get to completion for that initial view, at which point it'd be great to bring it back to the TAC to get your sort of review of that. We're open, obviously, at any time at that separate meeting for input as well. So please do come and join us in that one. That is really the main focus of where we're at for the end user group. Arno, got a question there?
Yeah, so I mean, we have the Sterling toolchain work that's starting or continuing. I don't know how to, but it seems like there should be a strong tie between the two, right?
That's really great point. So we were part of the Sterling toolchain lunch, or was it dinner at Vancouver, and a couple of the other conversations as well. And that's kind of where we're looking as well, Arno, is that, look, this is how consumers are set up. This is the different threats. Now, if we to look at a Sterling toolchain, how would that be placed on that to mitigate those threats? It's almost looking at effectively the threats and the requirements for that Sterling toolchain. So that is really our view. That's what we're trying to work with, and we'll be sitting down in 28 minutes to further that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So the next one is another piece of work we're working on. We did present it back to the TAC some time ago, and it's effectively a taxonomy for supply chain attacks, just so it would allow us to reason and discuss this amongst SMEs and end users. We did have some initial work from Henrik and Pierre Giorgio, and the feedback from the TAC at that point was to reach out to the CNCF and additional SMEs for feedback. We did do that. We did get additional feedback, and that was added to the taxonomy. We still do have some additional work there, I think, to really reconvene and look at how we push that forward. I think one of the big bits of feedback was there may be different views of the taxonomy in the middle stages of that taxonomy. If you've seen it, it's actually broken down into a sort of a TAC tree. And whilst the nodes are appropriate, people have different views on the middle nodes. So more work required there. That's going to be some time before we bring that back. And finally, really, I think, Eva, you were highlighting this an offline conversation. We'd love to have that about recruiting additional end users. We are having lots of conversations, as I said, but we need to translate that into active participation, and that's where we're heading. And really, the other part is contributing to the threat model when we get that done. So any further questions? No? Okay, I'll cede back to Krob.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the update. And if anyone has questions, the end user working group has a Slack channel and mailing list. Feel free to reach out directly to them. Reach out to the best working group if you have feedback or questions for that team. Let us talk about any foundation or staff updates. I see we have a securing software repos little note here. Who would like to talk to that?
Jonathan, this seems like you, Jonathan Lightshoes, rather.
Which one is this one? We're down
Great
to
artifact repository audit.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So not a item for the TAC. I just want to make everybody aware of this. I, under the Securing Software Repositories Working Group, I have put together a proposal called the Great Artifact Repository Audit. It's a collaboration that I'm doing with Amir from OSTIF. The idea is predicated on the concept of I believe that most artifact servers in the industry have never had a security audit performed against them, right? Like Maven Central, Gradle plugin portal, actually Maven Central has an audit, but like, PyPy, all these different services. And the proposal here is to actually fund through Alpha Omega and other avenues, actually paying for pen test and red team engagements against this critical infrastructure that supplies the entire open source industry, and actually paying, trying to get at resources allocated and actually having these audits occur. So if you're interested in getting involved in this conversation about this work, leave a comment on the proposal, or come join the weekly SIG meetings that are on Thursdays now. So, this is mostly like not necessarily the place to talk about this, but I wanted to make the TAC aware of it if the TAC wanted to be involved in this conversation.
Then you have the automated vulnerability fix campaign, Jonathan.
Yes. So I next thing is a link to a Lucidchart app. Yes. So we have finished working on this proposed flow for at least disclosing vulnerabilities in an automated way. There's a larger document attached to it. We're going to expand upon this, but the current proposal from the Vulnerability Disclosure Working Group AutoFix SIG is this proposed flow for how we would do disclosures. And I wanted to open it up to anybody, TAC. I just posted in general. We're looking for feedback on this flow. If people agree with this model of how to do automated disclosures or attempt to do automated disclosures. And yeah, I want to invite anybody to come to the weekly meetings for that. Those are on, we've just moved it to Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Or if you want to just, at me in Slack, feel free to. But I wanted to bring this to a wider discussion before, we committed to it and started building things off of it. So.
Any questions or comments for Jonathan on either the artifact repository audit or the automated fix campaign? All right, I would invite everyone interested to please participate on either the Slack, the mailing list, or come to the meetings and help us get those two efforts rolling. For the balance of our time together, I would like to talk about TAC issue 129, the technical vision. We had some conversation last week.
From Jennifer.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, I wondered if I could jump in with one thing from staff. Is that all right?
It'd be great to have it listed in the agenda next time, but yes,
apologies.
Please.
Apologies. I took that section as like time to share. All right. So apologies, next time I'll insert it right into the agenda, but we are going to have an OpenSSF Day EU co-located with Open Source Summit Europe, and we are looking for volunteers to be on the program committee. So that review is probably going to take place the week of July 10th. We're hoping to get the website up for the event next week and get things moving and open that CFP next week. So if you are interested in volunteering to be on the program committee, send an email to operations@openssf.org and let them know. It's going to be, we're looking for about 4 to 5 members to staff the program committee.
Awesome. I think the North America version was excellent this year. I would encourage everyone to make the European version equally as awesome.
Awesome. And then I'll just throw in there one other thing in terms of blogs. We have a blog coming out tomorrow on the supply chain integrity working group. And then our feature for next month is going to be the security tooling working group. So we're also opening the floor for guest blog submissions on SBOMs and fuzzing. So if you or someone you know might want to contribute a post on that, please feel free to do so. And then one more thing, we have a survey open at the moment, our OpenSSF software security awareness survey, and it's held in conjunction with LF research on how the OpenSSF is perceived and initiatives like SIGSTOR, Alpha Mega, Best Practices Badge, Scorecard, SALSA. So any help you could throw in to help share that survey would be great. There's a link to it on the homepage at the top when you go to the site. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions or comments, please route that to Jennifer, and we'll be glad to get both those efforts rolling. So let's talk about issue 129 around our technical vision. Did we get all of the outstanding comments addressed, and are we to a point we're happy and would like to merge this? TAC, go.
I think I addressed all the outstanding questions. If I missed something, that's just a minor oversight on my part, not a deliberate omission. But I will note that we have 5 votes in approval. So maybe if there are any additional questions on this, I'm happy to take it. But with 5 votes, I guess not sure what else other than further discussion we need to do on this.
Does anyone have any additional feedback, or are we happy to go?
I approve the PR, so.
All right. Excellent. We clawed back some time. David, did you have feedback?
Yeah, I noticed that there's a whole bunch of comments not resolved on 129s. I thought there was work still ongoing. Am I missing it?
Well, I was trying to leave that as context for folks as they were reviewing it. I wasn't trying to go through and just mark everything as done, but I'm not seeing any. I'm not seeing any unanswered questions that are.
Okay. So you left them open, but they have been resolved. Great. That's all I want to know. Thank you very much. Perfect.
Yeah, and some of them are from my comment. I know they are more like commentary, doesn't necessarily require action. So
Excellent. Well, let's get that merged, and we officially have updated our technical vision. Yay us. Then let us spend some time talking about a new issue that arose over the weekend. We had a new contributor put forth a issue 169 around a maintainer experience through the OpenSSF. We had talked about the end user perspective. Jonathan and Jacques just gave us a recap, and this is another persona that we actively work with, and there was interest in trying to see what was available and how we're addressing that set of collaborators. So any conversation we want to have around the maintainer experience today?
This is the issue that was opened in the big conversation underneath it about wait, sorry, I'm rambling.
Yeah, how do we make the foundation easy to engage for maintainers? And there was some questions.
And useful
and useful
to maintainers, right? Like literally.
And there was some conversation about some potential groups that touched a little bit on this, but there was no specific group with the mandate of addressing, making it easy for maintainers to engage. Mr. Wheeler.
Okay, so I have a proposal, and Krob, you can and others, you can shoot it down if you like. I think the closest working group to this is the best practices working group. And in particular, there's all sorts of awesome ideas in here. I immediately went and looked, oh man, yeah, we do need at least a page that points people, existing maintainers. And it's totally understandable. When we first started, we didn't have anything to point to. Hooray, we have things to point to. Now we need to point to them. So I would propose that the best practices working group pick this up as let's start looking at it. At the very least, I would suggest to them that they create like a little page for the main OpenSSF website that points, hey, you're a maintainer, where do you go? Craft that, and then discuss the other things. And if it eventually it turns out to be there's another working group that needs to be created or so on, but if nothing else, incubate it there and figure out what can be done right away. Because I think some of these things are easy, short wins that we should definitely do, and I'd be happy to help.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very common practice when you're looking at your web property to think about the user journey. And so we may want to, if this is an effort we want to move forward with, think about the other personas we're trying to address as well, and have those user journeys and have the website friendly towards folks that are looking for particular topics. Dustin.
Hi, folks. I wanted to raise, I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but there is like a mini committee effort right now around the OpenSSF's DevRel approach. This is sort of maybe more like evangelism focused, but I think a lot of the points that we're trying to address with that overlap with the maintainer experience approach here, mostly about advocating for the maintainer and things like that. So I dropped a link to the doc. Amanda's mostly been leading this with some input from other folks. I dropped a link in the doc there, but I think there's a lot of overlap here.
I agree. Arnaud.
Yeah, in your introduction, you say this is a persona that we are addressing, and I would say that based on this issue, we are failing to address it.
Agreed.
At least adequately. But I agree that this is a persona we want to address, and so I think we all agree this is great feedback, and we definitely should act on it. I think the landing page should be totally non-controversial. And it makes me wonder whether, we shouldn't learn from this and think about, other type of persona that would deserve having their own landing page, so that, you know, we could have a few pages on the website. Depending on who you are, you say, hey, go there. That's where we gather all the information that's pertinent to you. And then it reduces the pain point, right, of finding and the importance of where the actual work takes place. Because if it becomes easy to find, it doesn't really matter. I mean, that was one of the comments, you know, they don't care whether it's a project, a working group, how you call it, where it's structured in the you know, hierarchy or governance tree. But so I mean, if you can get direct access to the information that's relevant to you, then I think you're all better off. So I think and to follow up on David's proposal, I'm fine with starting with the best working group looking into this. I was a bit concerned that, you know, the comment is really that there's nobody focusing on their needs and providing a framework for them to really, you know, be the center of attention. And in a way, the best practice working group is not going to be that either, unless we change it, because to date, it has been mostly focusing on delivering material that could be used for the by the maintainers, but it's not exactly the same. So I have the feeling that eventually you might want to create a new working group for this, but that's also why I was asking the question to Jonathan earlier about the end users. Who are the end users? And I don't know how many of those we want to create. Probably don't want to have too many working groups, but you know, I think if that's what it takes, maybe it's worth it. So we have to keep that in mind.
And before I move to Jonathan, it might be a great collaboration between elements of the best working group kind of participating with this new DevRel committee. Because again, I agree with Dustin. That was an effort we had recently been talking about, of trying to get better evangelism within that community. So maybe we find a way to blend those efforts. Jonathan.
Thought crosses my mind. Most of the participants in the OpenSSF, and including the people that, you know, for the TAC and the people that can allocate their time and money and effort, right, are funded by their companies to spend time on this, because they and as such kind of have a corporate interest backing their, right, at a certain level, right, your company's investing in you, you're investing, and then giving you the time to invest in this project, right, especially if you're going to be a part of the TAC or something like that. Like, you know, that's something that you usually have a conversation with your team and say, like, you know, we do want to invest the time to do this sort of thing. Because of that, right, because of all of the vested interests that exist in the corporate world, are we lacking representation somewhere within this sphere, within the TAC, within the, maybe even within the governing board, from individuals that are not given the ability to be financed by their companies to spend the time focused on this, that we should consider trying to pull in those voices potentially? I know that we all are passionate about open source, right? Yeah, but Ava, you got a hand that's relevant to this exact.
Yeah, Jonathan, this is a point I've raised several times over the past year, including in GB meetings and here, that this body, when we look at who's in the room, it's almost exclusively folks from large companies. There are large amounts of open source that are critical, that are maintained by people who do so on a volunteer basis, and that we have struggled as an organization to reach. I think this is an incredibly salient point, and as I'm reading the issue, well articulated. I would love to see the value to individual maintainers clearly expressed and captured as sort of the front landing page, which also echoes that the audience is a bit different, the same challenge that the end user working group was just presenting as well. How do we articulate the value as two external parties, end users, maintainers of other projects, as the core focus when someone gets here for the first time, when they come to one of our events for the first time? That should be what we lead with, I think.
If we want to make sure that we get those people in the room to be a part of this conversation, and if they can't do it themselves, this may be something where we throw money at the problem potentially and hire those people that we want to see their faces in these rooms and organizations and allocating their time, but give them like contract them, like, you know, pay them for their time to participate in these. No,
not quite where I was going, at least. Rather, we have that knowledge, we've been building it, but right now, a lot of it's tucked away in working group or SIG documents. Could that be positioned more forward-facing on the website in our conferences? Could members of this body who are paid by our employers to do this go talk about this at other events? I'm thinking like B-sides. We get a lot of end users and a lot of individual maintainers at the smaller regional conferences. That's, to me, also aligned with the whole DevRel question, going out, meeting developers where they are to talk about the value we give them, not just what we want from them.
Excellent points. Bob, then Jacques, and then David.
You caught me right as I was putting food in my mouth. Sorry, I turned my camera off to spare everybody the image. The point I wanted to make, other than just plus oneing the general notion of the persona being maybe having a lack of focus in terms of external outreach, is that I think that there's a dynamic of this that is one-to-one in terms of reaching individual project maintainers or developers. There's a dimension of this which I see as kind of 1-to-M, in which I think in both the vision doc that was just merged, as well as in some of the conversations over the past several months, we've kind of called out the notion of needing to have full-time staff dedicated on ecosystem specific relationships, and thinking of those as ways. It's one thing for the OpenSSF to say something, it's a different thing for the Drupal Foundation or the PSF to say something to their constituent groups as well. So I'm not saying that that is the only path, but I guess I would just look for ways that we can amplify the right narrative and not necessarily say that the OpenSSF has to be the single one holding the bullhorn, that we can look to try to evangelize through direct and indirect methods.
Jacques?
I just wanted to amplify something Ava said, which was, I guess in a sense, going even further than having a page for maintainers, that the first page you get to on the OpenSSF should say, if you're a maintainer, here are things we do. If you're an end user, here are things we do. And if you're a vendor, this is where you should participate.
If you're a CISO, here's some resources for you.
Right, because those seem like sort of major constituencies. And at the moment, the OpenSSF page is generic, and because it's the one thing that we all agree on, you know, we talk about the governance structure, which doesn't necessarily get you to where you're trying to get to. So I think having the page built around that information architecture might be a useful reorganization, I think valuable. And a subnote to that, which is, I think there's kind of like two sub-personae in maintainers. One is the sub-personae where they're like, I am motivated to do security things. What do I do? And the other one is, I don't have any time or bandwidth. I'm already flat out. How can you help me? You know, what can you do for me? And those are related but distinct, I think, personae. And so we would want to sort of reflect that again in the information architecture. Like, I'm prepared to do something. I need help, as two sort of different emphases.
Excellent points. David.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, and completely agree with the interest to improve the communication and to provide a better, landing page portal for all of these different roles to understand about the OpenSSF. A couple of points I wanted to make is, one, to be very careful that this isn't hi, we're from the government. I'm sorry, OpenSSF, and we're here to help. Another is that, I mean, there is this balance between, as you said, the large corporations and people who have skin in the game. I'm not saying that these maintainers don't have skin in the game, but we want to be careful or at least aware of who is being included, who wants to participate, in the sense of, again, sort of skin in the game, understanding what their value is. I mean, I completely agree that for people who want information, who want help, and exactly as the way that Jacques mentioned these two different roles, but there's also just, not against it, but just this awareness that people with skin in the game, the corporations, people participating here, have a reason to participate and contribute both at the governing board, TAC, all these various SIGs and working groups, because of a certain value to them. And yes, we definitely should try to open this up and have all of the different voices participate. But we're trying to get us to make sure that there's a difference between people who are motivated versus a forum for activists the people who are interested to participate. We need to think about what their motivations are. I mean, some of the people who may not have so much skin in the game, but just want to, here I can start, creating regulations. I can start creating, different, requirements here. I can just start, telling a bunch of, these awful capitalist corporations what to do. And I mean, so there's just, careful of the voice that we're participating. Not that they shouldn't participate. I mean, clearly this should be open to everyone, but just to ensure that this has the right voice, and we understand the balance of presentation for the people who are going to be impacted with some of these different policies, which OpenSSF is doing a great job advocating, but just making sure that it's we understand what the implications are, and that the people who are participating are the ones who are actually going to be affected and have a lot of the requirements and regulations placed upon them. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. And I, for one, will commit my time, and I will encourage my friends in the BEST working group and the Diagrammers Society to participate with the DevRel team as that moves forward. I think this is an important piece of work to help us have that better outreach to our different communities. So I will commit myself and my friends to help make this successful, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. Any last minute thoughts in our final 3 minutes together? We have gone through our agenda. Any questions, comments, or feedback? All right. I thank everyone for your time and attention. Great job marching through our agenda and making some stuff happen today. Very glad we now have an official vision. Yay, us. And I look forward to talking to everyone very soon, if not in 3 minutes for some of you. Cheers.